we're putting the band back together.
Well, me and the Lord, we got an understanding.
We're on a mission from God.
It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
Welcome to the 70s versus the 80s. This is Wolfman Mike. And as you can guess, today we are talking the two iconic movies, Grease versus the Blues Brothers. Now, is one of the movies an iconic movie for chicks and the other one an iconic movie for bros or the dudes? Or is there more to it than that? We're going to find out on today's episode. Also, we're going to talk Crystal Pepsi versus New Coke. But first of all, I'm joined by Brian today. And Brian's going to talk about, well, unfortunately, you may have heard Gordon Lightfoot has passed away. And since we were talking John Belushi on the Blues Brothers today, you may be surprised to know that John Belushi and Gordon Lightfoot have a dubious connection. And Brian's going to start us out by explaining exactly that to us.
And all the girls dreamed that they'd be your partner, they'd be your partner, and you're so vain. You probably think this song is about you. You're so vain.
This segment is being brought to you by Carly Simon. Carly Simon, just like Taylor Swift, but from the 1970s. So, the first time I saw the Blues Brothers, it's kind of a interesting story, or I think it's a fun story. I'd gone with some high school classmates, and I'll just leave it at that. And we had gone to see the Gophers basketball team play at Williams Arena, and this was back in 86 or 87. We'd had just gotten our licenses and everything, and so it would have been, February or something like that. We sat so far up in the rafters, I could actually rest my arm on a beam.
Rafter.
On a rafter, actually, yeah, way up there. And the tickets were cheap and everything, and it was probably, maybe two-thirds full at best. And after the game, so one of them is like, I got some friends who are going to Hamlin University, so we must have been seniors at the time. So let's stop there. So we stopped there, and they're like, we got to watch this movie. And they put in the Blues Brothers on VHS, and I watched it in some, I don't know if it was a dorm room or an apartment or something near Hamlin University. And it's not a short movie, right? It's a 2-hour movie. My parents, when I finally get home, it's like, well, what took so long? The Gophers game's been over for a while. Oh, we went to one of my friends' houses, and we watched the Blues Brothers. Like, oh yeah, likely story. But no, honest to God, that's where I first saw it. And it was funny, and it was great because it's like you're just then at an age where you could watch Saturday Night Live, and it was the beginning, because since the beginning, even Aykroyd has spoken to this on an interview that I've heard, and I think I sent it to you, is the first time someone said that the Saturday Night Live wasn't as good as it used to be was during the second season. So that's been a constant thing. It's never as good as it used to be. But we just had started, you really started getting into it, and it just had kind of started picking back up again after the malaise after the original cast left. And so it's like, this is a old Blues or the old Saturday Night Live stuff that we see in reruns, and so it was fun to watch. And then it was, it was like, because that was, again, pre-music video. You didn't see Aretha Franklin music videos or James Brown music videos on MTV, so it was fantastic to watch. So that's the first time I had seen the Blues Brothers, and then I watch at least once a year now.
And the sad thing is John Belushi was like, we kind of saw him after he died is kind of when we get into him, because he died so young. I mean, it was like...
That is true. It's like you're seeing this comic genius, and then you see the fake advertisements they did for Little Chocolate Donuts when he's a track runner, and his samurai, and all this stuff, and then the Blues Brothers and the energy, the dynamics he brought. And then you start to have when someone like Chris Farley shows up on the show, and then he dies way too young. Does harken back to these shining talents that burn brightly and then just are gone. They're not here. Yeah. And I got really big into the Allman Brothers, and the Allman Brothers had really kind of broke up in 79, or not 79, like 81 or 82, and had just and so you go backwards to the beginning stuff that's just fabulous, and you're kind of discovering it, but when you discover it, the original people that were making it, some of them have already passed on.
Lord, I feel like I'm dying.
So we've been talking about John Belushi on this episode, and recently the fantastic Canadian troubadour and even better songwriter Gordon Lightfoot has passed, and one of the women he dated, and I think the Sundown song is written about, is the same woman who is the one that injected the speedball into John Belushi that ended up killing him. And so that's kind of just how weirdly these lives of famous people are intertwined, and it's just an interesting story.
She's been looking like a queen in a sailor's dream.
Obviously, she's and I'm not gonna, just run her down without knowing, but she's obviously quite a alluring character to be able to be involved and get this song Sundown written about her and be into John Belushi's life, to be that involved with it.
Gordon Lightfoot, obviously had some things go on with her to write a song like Sundown about her, but he said he could not say anything bad about her. And
there's some people are just so intensely great, but then they also seem that they have, because everyone has their flip side of the coin, is that those bad sides end up being just as intense. But you don't necessarily, hold it against the person. It's just sometimes people that have incredible highs will also have incredible lows. Where us as Minnesota men take the Bud Grant approach, where we try to be just stoic and just kind of flatline our whole way through.
Yeah. We were going to say her name. I can't find her name.
I think it was Kathy Smith. I'd have to look it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see they say she hung out with John Belushi was hanging out with a less than reputable group of characters, namely one Kathy Smith, a former backup singer for the band who had become a strung-out addict and drug dealer. Ooh. Yeah.
Well, that's another, Robbie Robertson and Levon Helm in the band. It's another fantastic Canadian group.
Yeah.
Canada's had some good singers and songwriters and musical acts.
Yeah.
And they also have the Bare Naked Ladies.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Cock your head to the side and said I'm angry. 5 days since you laughed at me. Saying, get back together, come
They also have them, yes.
Yes. And they had some tremendous musical acts and singer-songwriters. Gordon Lightfoot, it's because Bob Dylan said that he, every Gordon Lightfoot song was too short and he loved the way he wrote. And Jimmy Buffett was a big fan of Gordon Lightfoot. His song Come Monday, he was trying to emulate Gordon Lightfoot's songwriting. And now that I saw that, the Jimmy Buffett had said that after Gordon Lightfoot had passed, it 100% makes sense. That's such a Gordon Lightfoot style song.
Yeah, so Gordon Lightfoot, will miss him. He was just to have Bob Dylan say that every song he wrote was perfect, and you wish they could go on forever. I mean, Bob Dylan knows a little bit about writing songs, so
yes,
that's got to be the greatest compliment you could get from the best person to get it from. So so we'll miss him.
Someone too had Bob Dylan covered one of their songs in concert, and they're like, that's like the ultimate. I think it was Jimmy Buffett again, that he did a Bob Dylan song because he heard Bob Dylan did A Pirate Looks at 40, which is a pretty good Jimmy Buffett song. The thing with Gordon Lightfoot, if we wanted to talk about him a little bit more, those songs, and maybe it's just something about his voice and the little bit of a sparseness to him, but with some good guitar playing and everything, they kind of really just draw you in.
Yeah.
They're not like assaulting you. It's like you kind of lean forward and you lean into the music and then you pick up on these lyrics, and he had a unique voice quality, which the great ones do. Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson no one's going to say that those are top 10 singers of all time, like when we go back to the Blues Brothers of Aretha and James Brown and Ray Charles. But those songs, you can't not listen to a good Willie Nelson song or a good Bob Dylan song, or Gordon Lightfoot has that same thing. It just has a unique voice and it just draws you in.
And his songs sound like they came out perfect. I'm sure they didn't, but they sound like they came out perfectly hatched. Like they were just born, like, and they're so effortless. I just really get an effortless feel from him. Like he was born singing that one song, like right from the beginning of the song.
Yeah. The verses flow together. It's just like going down a nice, gentle stream and just you're just being taken along by this music and you're flowing, and it's glad to have been able to be alive at the same time as he was, and to be able to listen to some of these songs when they first came out.
And he was, if you go back to my Little 500 episode where I do these song clips, he kind of ends it, and it's my favorite clip of the whole episode. It's a 20-minute episode. We have like probably 50, 60 song clips in it, and then the Gordon Lightfoot one, if you listen, it kind of ends the whole episode, and it's kind of my favorite one of the episode too. So.
Yeah, people go back and listen to that. That is wonderful. And we won't wreck it, but it's one of the songs that people really remember him about most. It's not necessarily one of his best songs. It's very well done, but it's in that episode, and give it a listen, because Mike did do a great job putting that in there to end it. All right, frequent guest Brian Malika here, and I'm taking over the show again today like I did a couple of years ago for the episode on baseball. Amazon Prime has a streaming show called Daisy Jones and the Six. It's a fictional band set in the 1970s, kind of an homage to the Fleetwood Mac type music of the 1970s. This got me thinking, what movies from the 1970s and 1980s pay homage to music from the past? Well, the 1970s had 1978's Grease, and the 1980s had 1980's The Blues Brothers. This episode, instead of reviewing the 70s show and then the 80s show, we're going to change up the format a little bit. I originally had the idea of pitting these two movies against each other as a spoof of the last presidential debates, and have each person talking over and interrupting each other. But we here at the 70s versus the 80s podcast realize that unlike our nation's politics, the topic of the 1970s versus the 1980s is much too important for such childish actions. Instead, we're going to calmly and open-mindedly discuss how both movies compare and contrast on a list of topics. At the end of each topic, Mike and I will award a point to which decade's movie did it better, and at the end, we will tally up the points and see if it's a unanimous decision on which decade did it better, or if it will be a split decision. So get your predictions in now. Who is going to win in the clash of the movie musicals, Grease and the 1970s, or the Blues Brothers and the 1980s? Mike, welcome to my Stealing Your Podcast, you and Jim's podcast.
Hey, Brian.
So, as children of the 70s, teenagers in the 80s, we have had these movies in our popular conscience, for many years. And so we're just going to kind of throw a topic out there. We're going to debate these two movies at the end. We'll just pick which one does it better. So I thought we'd start with something simple. Every movie has a cast. So which cast was a better cast? Was it the cast of Grease, or was it the cast of Blues Brothers? And I'll let you, since I've been kind of dominating up until now, I'll let you start with your thoughts on these two casts.
Ooh, that is a very tough one, because right away with Grease, I think you get John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John, and, Stockard Channing, and I even like Jeff Conaway. I thought he was really good in it. He kind of played the greasy bad guy. So, you get those big hitters, but, John at the time, John Travolta was just starting to be a big hitter.
He was just exploding at the time, yeah.
Yeah, and Olivia Newton-John really hasn't done many movies, but she was a famous singer at the time. So, just naming those big names right off the bat, you think, obviously, I'm going to give it the cast to Grease. But the thing about Blues Brothers is it just runs so deep. So we have the big hitters, Aykroyd and Belushi, but then we had Carrie Fisher in 1980 when she was making a little movie called Empire Strikes Back in 1980.
People might have heard of that one.
people might have heard of that one. We covered it at one time. But then you have the James Brown, Aretha Franklin, and then like I can't believe like Steven Spielberg even had a little funny interlude, 20-second scene, and then Twiggy played the date that got stood up, and then there was Shaka Khan was in it, and then there was Paul Rubens was in it from Pee Wee. I don't think he's playing Pee Wee Herman, but
I don't think at the time yet.
And then all the musicians that were in it that I can't even remember their names at this time, but
and there's like Frank Oz, the voice of Miss Piggy, and Fozzie Bear, and Steve Lawrence with Steve Lawrence and Eating Name. He was famous in the 70s. It is a star-studded ensemble, definitely.
Yeah, so that's the conundrum. I guess since Belushi's just a legend, so he's also so he kind of cancels out John Travolta, I think. They don't have a female. I mean, Carrie Fisher. I guess even Carrie Fisher kind of cancels out Olivia Newton-John. So I'm going to go with the Blues Brothers. What say you, Brian?
All right. So I was. I'll have to. Okay. Full disclosure. I think the Blues Brothers is a cinematic masterpiece, and Grease is just a movie I tolerate when my wife and daughter are watching it. I though originally thought I would lean towards Grease with the star power of John Travolta and how the supporting role Stockard Channing, Jeff Conaway, and even you get a little bit of Sid Caesar, kind of a Lorenzo Lamas is in there for a brief period of time. But when you start to list off I think we even talked about John Candy having a role in the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, we didn't even mention him.
Just the depth of it. It's kind of like Grease would be, you had a couple big hitters, and then it's like if it was a baseball pitching staff, and then you'd have to hope for rain for a few days before you could have John Travolta hit again. But with the Blues Brothers, maybe didn't have quite as big a star as, like, say, a John Travolta. They're just coming off of Saturday Night Fever. But you just had, it's like every scene, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's someone that I didn't expect to be in this movie. There's someone I didn't expect to be in this movie. So I think you swayed me that I would actually go to the Blues Brothers.
That's pretty crazy. We both voted that way when they got Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta starring in the other movie.
And Olivia Newton-John in those pants.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We should have named them as their own starring role. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So then the second category is if you have a movie, you're going to have a plot. And so in a nutshell, the plot of Grease is two high school kids meet in the summer, have a little fling, thinking they're going off to different schools in the fall, and then, oh, voila, we're at the same school, and tension and drama exist, and then it unfolds. There's going to be a national dance party held at the school, and there ends up going to be a car race, and that's kind of the arc of it. And the more of the plot is the good girl Sandy, the Olivia Newton-John character, becomes a bad girl at the end. I mean, is that pretty much summing up the plot of Grease, or do you have anything to add to that?
I think you're making it sound more deep than it actually is, but yes.
That might be the case. Blues Brothers, ne'er too well, Jake Blues, the Belushi character, John Belushi character, gets out of jail for a heist that he held up to try to pay his bandmates, and he'd spent 3 out of 5 years at Joliet. And they go back to the orphanage where they were raised and find out that they need to pay a $5,000 taxes to keep the orphanage from being taken over by the city or whatever. And then the rest of the movie is they decide they want to put their band back together to earn the money, and so it's a lot of we're putting the band back together, and it's a lot of we're on a mission from God because they're doing it for the Penguin, which is having grown up Catholic and had honest to God nuns come and teach our Sunday school. That penguin thing is it's still hilarious to this day. The black and the white, and they look like a penguin.
And I like in the movie how she has she floats through the doorways and the doors close behind her with the supernatural powers.
And that creak, it's just because if you get the sound up, like if you'd have seen this in the actual theater, because I don't, it was 1980, we were like 10. that creaking sound as the door shut would have just been fantastically spooky in a great sounding movie theater.
So, so are you going first on this one? We're picking.
Well, I as much as I love the Blues Brothers and a cinematic masterpiece, the plot is just kind of like a bunch of Saturday Night Live sketches, which this is kind of where the Blues Brothers debuted on is Saturday Night Live, kind of a little fun thing for Aykroyd and Belushi to do together. And so there's not much of a plot. It's just it's just an excuse to go to these different scenes, putting the band together, and then trying to raise the money. So while the Grease plot isn't necessarily, Shakespeare or Hitchcock or anything to write home about, it, in my view, it does beat out the Blues Brothers plot. That might be the weakest part of the Blues Brothers. It's Aykroyd's first movie he wrote. You can tell because it's just so convoluted and detailed and all this unnecessary things, but it's like it doesn't necessarily flow great. And Grease, it's the whole, brings you back to high school. It's like, okay, I remember there was tension and everything in high school. So I on this one I give it to Grease.
So I'll give Grease a strong. I think the strongest part of Grease is like when they tell me more, how they get into that song. Like they have them separated and they're both talking to their friends. I thought that was pretty ingenious. The rest of the plot feels very West Side Story-ish, Romeo and Juliet kind of rewritten.
Yeah, boiled down and made tasteless for the masses. Something good like Romeo and Juliet or West Side Story, and dumbed down for us.
Yeah, and both movies. I mean, they get to a part where there's a car shredding another car, and I'm not even sure how we get there. In an aqueduct, and it's like,
Well, yeah, especially considering the play was set in Chicago, how they're racing in Los Angeles, the aqueduct of the Los Angeles River. I don't know. That's an awfully long way to go for a race. It's worse than Cars.
yeah, and do you think John Travolta was really driving that car?
No, probably not.
No, you could see. I mean, you could see the fakey. Yeah. So, and then you're right, Blues Brothers. I was amazed that Dan Aykroyd was 28 years old when he wrote that. He was pretty young, and he wrote it like a 28-year-old. He was just like you said, he was swinging for the fences on everything. Everything didn't all come together, and they didn't seem to care. They're just like, well, let's go on to the next scene. So
right, like when the rocket hits the transient hotel and they all get collapsed in underneath the bricks and then they stand up and they just dust themselves off and move on to the next scene. That's kind of how he wrote it. Yeah.
And then I still think the biggest plot hole is when they're playing behind the. I love when they're playing in the country bar behind the chicken wire, and the bottles are exploding behind them, but they're replacing the band that's supposed to be there, and then everybody gets up and goes home, and then the band shows up, and they don't really make a big. They said, yeah, we're late, but it's like, holy crap, you're really late. It's like it was just a plot. It was just a plot to move the
right to
forward.
Be able to see the marquee and say it should say, when the other band's like, well, the marquee says the Good Old Boys. Oh, it should say the triumphant return of the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, so
but that kind of fake it until you make it kind of mentality that Jake is showing there, where he's like, oh, trust me, the next one will be big, and he's just flying by the seat of his pants. It's kind of a little bit like the Jack Sparrow character in the Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like he's just making it up as he goes along, and it works out for him. He fakes his way into Bob's Country Bunker, and then it just happens that the other band is running late for whatever reason.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to give a slight nod to Grease, but not a very strong one. But I think they both were pretty plot weak.
Like half a point.
Yeah.
All right, so next, since these are movie musicals, we have to talk about the music. And it's their homages. So Grease is kind of homage to the 50s, and so you get a little bit of that doo-wop and a little bit of that 50s type rock. You get a little hand jive, things like that. And then Blues Brothers is an homage to the rhythm, blues, and soul of kind of the mid to late 60s.
Okay. So am I going first?
Why don't you go ahead and go first?
So, do we know this Grease soundtrack? How many songs did the Bee Gees do off it?
I don't know. I know that it was the second largest selling album of that year of 78, only passed by the 77 soundtrack from Saturday Night Fever, which shows you how, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, how dreadful music got in the late 70s.
Well, the fact that the two biggest soundtracks ever have John Travolta on the cover of them is pretty crazy, and they were only like 1 year apart, right?
Yeah, yeah. Saturday Night Fever was in 77, and then Grease was in 78.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out how many. Okay, so we get. Oh, Barry Gibb was the one that did Grease. It's not even the. It's not even credited to the. Oh, he's the writer. Okay, so that is the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm a big Bee Gees guy. So I like that they have a number of songs on there, but the rest of it was just like some that my older sister liked. I mean, it was just kind of a. Like you said, I think you said your wife likes it.
Yeah, my wife and daughter like it. The Summer Lovin' that is in the start, that's like, I think that's a couple's go-to karaoke song. Like I said, it's the
Yeah.
first song I ever saw when I ever saw a karaoke bar and you're walking past and this guy and girl were singing Summer Lovin'. And then the We Go Together at the end, Look at Me Sandra D. They're kind of they certainly fit in the movie and they're kind of fun little songs, but they're not anything that you would intentionally go and listen to. They're great in the movie, but I don't think you'd intentionally try to listen to "Look at Me, I'm Sandra D" or "We Go Together" or Go Together or anything like that.
Yeah. So I mean, I mean, I like all. It's just it's a chick. I don't want to say it, but it's a chick record. I mean, they seem to really get into it and like the album. The thing, what I'll give the edge to the Blues Brothers is, I mean, we have James Brown doing James Brown. We have Aretha Franklin doing Aretha Franklin. We have, kind of more of the original artist. I mean,
Yes.
so that's where I'm going to give it the edge to that, just because
Yeah.
it just, yeah, they're in their own voices.
Instead of saying we need someone who sounds like James Brown to be a preacher, it's like, well, why don't we just go get James Brown? And it was an homage to that kind of music, and same thing with Aretha and Ray Charles, and then even just the other songs that are in there, just like the Peter Gunn theme being played by the Blues Brothers. Ride of the Valkyries is in it. That's always fun. And Sweet Home Chicago, just the songs the Blues Brothers play. And then this was, when it came out in 1980, it was before, I think it was before MTV, right? MTV was a 1980
82 maybe?
182, something like that.
81, yeah.
I apologize if my research is off, but you didn't have the music videos yet, or at least they weren't a big thing like they became after MTV launched. And so you really get 3 full-length, well-choreographed music videos starring James Brown, Aretha Franklin, and Ray Charles with dancing and everything. And so that part is that's fun on its own. And since I'm more in the line of more of a rhythm and blues type person than the Bee Gees, I would kind of by default lean this way. But I think it's kind of, like I said, it's a terrible plot so that you can have these songs be in it. Even the Rawhide and the Stand By Your Man at Bob's Country Bunker are well done, and it's an actual part of why the acting and the plot wasn't good is these are actual musicians. It's a couple people from Booker T and the MGs. It was I think a session drummer for Stax Records. It was a lot of the horn section from Saturday Night Live. I mean, it was a honest to God real band and top notch. I mean, the weakest points were the 2 stars, Aykroyd and Belushi. The rest of the band was completely legit.
Yeah, and Grease, like I was saying, that's not even my favorite Bee Gees soundtrack. It's not as good as Saturday Night Fever, not even close.
Certainly.
I'll give Blues Brothers a slight deduction for not playing Soul Man, the Blues Brothers song, and that's I have a funny story about that. That's when we talk about mixed up lyrics. When I was a kid, I thought he was saying "I'm so mad," like he was mad, but it's Soul Man,
Right.
And it sounds, if you listen to it, and you'll just only hear it that way now.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Oh, thanks for that.
'Cause I'm coming, I'm a soul man. I'm a soul man.
all right, what's our next category, Brian?
So next category is the cars. So as I said in the plot, part of the focal point of Grease is there is a race between the rival gangs, the ones from Rydell High, the T-Birds, and then the gang from a neighboring school. And so there's a race there. And then in the Blues Brothers, the Bluesmobile is almost like another cast member because it's in so many scenes. It's a fantastic opening shot where Elwood's kind of leaning up against the car in his black hat, black suit coat, black suit pants, and his Wayfarer shades, leaning up against the former Mount Prospect police car as Jake gets out of prison. And then there's the chase through the mall. There's the good old boys chasing him. They're driving it through on the beaches and announcing it. There's the chase at the end, and then when it falls apart, when they're at Daily Plaza ready to go pay the county tax assessor, and then Elwood takes his hat off for a second and gives it a moment of silence, and then they continue on. So it's like the Bluesmobile is almost could be considered a character of in the cast. It was kind of integral. And then there was all these real action. The police chases, they got permission to do a couple of high-speed runs down Lower Wacker Drive in Chicago. So when you're seeing them zipping through there and the speedometer's at 130 miles an hour, they're actually a stuntman driving it at speed. And the same thing with the police cars. You're not going to see any movie today where you're going to have 8-9 cars going 115 miles an hour through a populous metro area. And then the stunt people running out of the way in the mall. It's kind of a throwback to movie making that now you just use CGI and or you go out to rent a racetrack somewhere where you can do these car stunts without being in harm's way.
Yeah, kind of like when they were going through that mall, I can't believe they didn't kill anybody. And then you know what I'm thinking, the director is kind of on a serious note. The director is John Landis, and he maybe he was kind of reckless because they did end up killing somebody on the Twilight Zone. But
yeah, well, and I think it was in '79 or whenever when they were filming it, it was I don't know if it was an abandoned mall and they reset it up, or a soon to be abandoned mall or something like that they were going to be destroying. And so they got permission to film there. And my grandmother had gone out to visit her sister in Ohio. And then on the way back, they saw that there was some mall where they were doing some kind of movie filming. And I'm thinking it was this scene from the Blues Brothers. I'm not 100% certain. My grandma's since passed. I can't find out for certain. But, I mean, the budget to recreate stores, Pier 1 Imports, this place has got everything. The new Oldsmobiles are in early this year. All those fun little throwaways. Like, again, it's a fantastic, if you're looking at it as a Saturday Night Live sketch, it's a fantastic sketch from when the car breaks into the mall and to when they leave, going past and the person's holding I can't remember which Muppet character it is, Grover or something like that, and asks if they got a Miss Piggy, which is kind of an homage because Frank Oz is in the movie at the beginning as the guy letting him out of prison.
So what's the next category?
All right, so we're both saying that the Blues Brothers had the cars. It was a better portrayal of cars.
Well, just because they have the huge, like you said, the budget is just unbelievable. How many police cars they have crashing into each other at the end, and it just there's so many car chase scenes.
Yeah,
I mean, it almost kind of puts Dukes of Hazzard to shame a little bit.
Well, the jumping the drawbridge when Jake doesn't like the car.
Yeah.
And Elle was like, "You don't like it?" And then he goes and like stomps the throttle and goes and jumps over the drawbridge, and then Belushi's like, "Well, it's got a lot of pickup."
And then, like I've already said, I think the car race scene, and I mean, you can tell they filmed it. They drove in slow motion and spilled up speed, and then John Travolta, when he's behind the wheel, is obviously in the sound studio, and then when he's far away, him and they have such distinct hairstyles, you can tell it's a stunt man with a wig, and yeah. So I'm going Blues Brothers.
All right, yeah, Blues Brothers as well. All right, so Legacy. So came out in 78 and 1980. We're still talking about them today. We still could pretty much watch them today. They still have cultural significance today. So which movie has a stronger legacy?
Which one of us is going first?
Well, I would argue that the Blues Brothers, because of, and only because of the Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, and James Brown appearance, and kind of while they're still in great form and great voice, these are maybe all three of these are probably in the top 10 best singers of all time, in my opinion. That having a living document of them putting on performance in their prime, it makes it hold up, and it's fantastic music. It's a bygone era where music was made with actual musicians and not with all this added electronics. Grease is fun because it is Travolta pre Scientology, and it is and it is a throwback to a high school experience that no one has anymore, especially after the pandemic, which is nice. But I think just the Blues Brothers as a homage to fantastic rhythm and blues with the actual artists there would win for me in legacy.
So yeah, you make an excellent point where they have the James Brown, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin. I kind of see what you're doing with legacy there. That makes a good point. I was kind of thinking legacy, like I guess which one has a more of a lasting in the society. And even though I'm a huge John Belushi fan, I'm a huge Saturday Night Live fan. For some reason, Blues Brothers always kind of was under the radar for me. And and I was saying I'm not the demographic for Grease, obviously, because I'm not a young girl. But I think Grease. I mean, I don't think it's for. I think it's Grease is so important to a lot of women. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
And it's so iconic. And then so I'm gonna have to go. And then basically the thing that puts me over the top for Grease for winning on legacy is the black leather pants. I think that's
yes, we cannot forget
that's
that.
Its own legacy. Yeah,
Sandy's turn from long flowing skirt wearing to black leather pants wearing is certainly memorable.
So when are we going to do the episode where we go Olivia Newton-John's black leather pants against Princess Leia's gold bikini? When's that episode?
Oh, that's definitely one we want Jim for.
All right. So what else we got on the?
So next is they're out there, sequel, and it kind of goes to the legacy thing. Grease was so big that its sequel followed up maybe 7 years later. I think it was about 85. Whereas the Blues Brothers, it wasn't until 18 years later. And both sequels are universally panned as being nowhere near what the original is. But they have them, and so we're going to discuss them and debate them. This might be the shortest one of all, because I've never seen either of them.
Me neither. I mean, let's look at the Rotten Tomato scores here. Ooh, it's got a 35 from the critic score and a 53 for audience score. That's actually better than I thought for Grease 2 on Rotten Tomatoes. And then, so that's a 35. What is Blues Brothers? What is it called? Blues Brothers 2? Or is it just Blues Brothers?
I think it's Blues Brothers 2000.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, Blues Brothers 2000 comes in at 46. That's not, I mean, that's a bad score, but it's not horrible.
No. Maybe we've been erring in our judgment, and we should actually give these two a watch. I've been hearing that when I was starting to look into the Blues Brothers 2000, just as it was a sequel and why I should watch it. My thought is I should watch it just alone for there's a Wilson Pickett number in there. Wilson Pickett wasn't in the first one, but was a fantastic soul singer. Maybe the best soul screamer, where he could, people said he could scream in tune or in key, and they kind of pay homage to him with the first song that Everybody Wants Somebody to Love was a staple of Wilson Pickett's stage show. And so for me, for that reason alone, I would lean towards the Blues Brothers 2000 just because Wilson Pickett would be in it. And then again, I have to say I'm a fan of Wilson Pickett, and that's probably what's clouding my choice. And you could argue too that I picked these categories with the thought they would lean towards the Blues Brothers. But hey, I'm running this. I stole this podcast. I took over, so I'm going to run it my way.
Yeah, Grease 2, I mean, it has Michelle Pfeiffer as the female lead, and then Maxwell Caulfield as the male lead, who looks like he was in Gettysburg and nothing else.
Well, and that's if you're going to cast a musical follow-up, right? A sequel to a popular musical, you want to get someone who starred in Gettysburg.
When's Lin-Manuel Miranda going to make a Gettysburg musical? That'd be awesome.
Oh, don't you got to contact him right now and see if you can get some royalties from that. I think that would actually be pretty good because that 3 days of that battle and kind of the change it made in the tenor of the war is a fantastic historical event. And I'm all for more historical musicals. I also want a musical for Sherman's March to the Sea and Burning of Atlanta.
That okay, we'll talk. I got something going for that, but we'll all right, so what did we both vote there? I don't.
So I voted Blues Brothers just on the fact that there's a Wilson Pickett song in the Blues Brothers sequel.
I'm going to go Blues Brothers because it's slightly higher on Rotten Tomatoes, and there's just like Grease 2 looks like it has zero redeemable. I mean, it's a waste of film stock. So
yeah, it's like all the bad stuff of the first movie with no John Travolta or Olivia Newton-John. Coming to theaters near you. All right, so the last segment is with today's nature of things being, a streaming event, 4 episodes, 6 episodes, or whatever. Which of these two shows would be easier, or would end up being better to remake as a streaming show, and who would we cast in them, and then which one would we vote on would be more watchable? And I'll start for Grease. Basically, you just get the High School Musical cast like Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens.
Like Glee, isn't it?
Or Glee, yeah. You could get Lea Michele and people from Glee. Either of those things. Yeah, I guess you're right. Glee's kind of did this already.
Yeah, Grease would just be like Happy Days mixed with Glee, wouldn't it? I mean, it would just be
yes,
mostly Glee, but
right. You get Happy Days. Happy Days wardrobe. Happy Days wardrobe and all the Glee stuff. Happy Days always makes me think of. There was a guy walking around and he would always hit a jukebox and get free money, and so he was getting money for nothing, and so it was like a Fonzie scheme. Yeah, I 100% deserve that one.
Okay.
So Blues Brothers, when I was thinking about a Saturday Night Live thing, people who like music, made me think, and then just their shape made me think you could cast Bill Hader, and he had Portlandia. Fred Armisen.
Fred Armisen.
Fred Armisen could be Jake, and Bill Hader could be Elwood.
Oh, that's not too bad.
I think that would be a good casting. And then you could go through music today, or even like 10 or 20 years ago, Aerosmith and maybe the White Stripes or Black Keys or stuff like that. Yeah.
So kind of like a classic rock.
Classic rock. Soul and everything turned more into hip hop, and I don't know if we want to celebrate like R. Kelly or anything like that.
If you're gonna do classic rock, I think a star would have to be Jack Black. Would have to be one of because he could actually play the.
Yeah. Yes.
And his show was kind of like that.
Jack.
Was a little. What the hell was that
Jack
called?
Black 100% would do the Belushi character. Yeah, that'd be a fantastic casting.
Because he's into the music like that and such.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So did we have to pick a winner for this one? Oh,
yeah, we can pick a winner. Which would be easier to remake or would be more interesting to watch? The retread of Happy Days and Glee, or Jack Black and a yet to be named person going around with old classic rock, or paying homage to classic rock bands and having some of them in it.
Yeah, I would. There's that Glee dressed up like Happy Days does nothing for me. I would have to go with the Blues Brothers series because, like you said, you could get the classic rock. They could do a different song every week.
And this is a topic that I think we should touch on. And people can go to the Facebook page and comment if they would want us to touch on it, is these bands that from the 70s and stuff that are still just barely hanging on. Like we recently had the last founding member of Lynyrd Skynyrd passed, yet there's still a Lynyrd Skynyrd out there touring. And when Fogerty left and they would go out and do Creedence Clearwater Revisited. So it's like, what's the, have an argument or a debate is it worth it to go see these classic rock acts if it's only like one member from the original band? I think that's something we could certainly do a future episode on.
Yeah, because last night I worked at the Foreigner show and there was 0 original members, but they had like some they were old rockers. They had like some guy from Dokken, and I mean they're all from real bands, and they were amazing, and it was incredible. But it was 0 original members. So,
well, and some of it is just these are catchy songs, and just to hear them live as opposed to listening to them on the radio or listening something from that, going and experiencing live music is different. So is live music, playing these songs we loved but with none of the original members, would that be worth your time and entertainment dollar? I think that is a great argument because I can see both sides of it.
Yep.
All right, well I'm going to tally up the scores. It looks like it's a Blues Brothers landslide. Mike was 5-2 with the Blues Brothers and I was 6-1. So it looks like Blues Brothers in the 1980s did a better job of this, paying homage to music of the past with their musicals. So I don't know if it's a surprising result when I admitted up at the top that I'm a huge Blues Brothers fan.
Finally, the 1980s beats the 70s and something. But we should have got a female guest in here and
100% right.
Yeah.
See if it would have changed. Probably would have.
Yes. Because I think the way we react to Grease is the same way females act to Blues Brothers. It just, yeah.
Yes, that is true.
All right, my babies. That's enough talking about 2 movies that were iconic. Now we're going to talk about 2 soft drinks that were iconic, but not in a good way. They were iconically bad. That's right. We got to do it. We got to talk New Coke versus Crystal Pepsi. All right, right here, right now. This is the speed round. Brian, are you ready?
As always, I am not ready, but we're going to do it anyways.
I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about the Semical product of 1992 that changed our lives. First of all, did you know it was called Crystal Pepsi? Because when we were talking about it, we kept calling it Pepsi Clear.
We did call it Pepsi Clear, which is probably a more accurate description of it. And I also didn't realize that it came out in 1992. So this is 70s versus 80s adjacent.
So Pepsi Clear or Crystal Pepsi, they got rid of the caramel color. What was it supposed to make it? What was that supposed to change the taste when they got rid of the caramel color?
I think it was supposed to make it a little bit less bitter.
That is incorrect. It was supposed to make it less acidic for some reason. I don't know why caramel make this. Do you ever associate caramel with acidic? No, I do not either.
It also had like 20 less calories.
Yeah, and that was kind of surprising. And what beer immediately? Although the answer is all of them, which one immediately answered with a clear beer? Do you remember?
I remember Zima being the clear thing, and always making fun of people that drank Zima. I think even including you.
Yeah, Zima was the drink for a minute there. It was. I think Miller Clear was the Miller Clear beer was the first one to follow. Yeah, and True or false, Crystal Pepsi was named Best New Product of the Year for 1992 by Richard Saunders International.
Yes, it got a 1% market share in its first year.
Very good. You know a lot about this. So, all right, let's I think we'll do a rant section at the end, but did you want to ask me some new Coke questions right now?
Yes. So, 7 years earlier, Coke decided to do something different, and they introduced what became known as New Coke. And after market testing, where some people were saying that this is going to be a problem and they plowed on anyways, it ended up becoming a huge problem. Although, when you go back and look at taste tests, it actually, people preferred the taste, but it was more of a marketing and regional thing where people liked the old Coke. So I did write up 4 questions. Question number 1. Where were you on April 23rd, 1985?
I think I was reaching my second all-time score on Miss Pac-Man on the Atari 26, maybe? I don't remember.
All right. That's the date that it was launched. Okay, question number 2. What comes to mind when I say Project Kansas?
Sounds like you're working on a nuclear weapon to me.
That was the in-house code word or code project name for developing New Coke.
Wow.
Okay. Question number 3. Was Bill Cosby appearing in commercials for New Coke the worst thing he ever did for his credibility?
Man, that's tough. That's a tough one. I would have to say, I'm going to say no. I would say it's a slight second. I mean, those, you know what I'm going to say? Those Jell-O commercials were kind of disturbing also.
The pudding pops ones.
Pudding pop commercials, yeah.
All right. Last question about New Coke. If Olivia Newton-John, wearing her black leather pants, approached you at a roller rink in the summer of 1985 and asked if you would buy her a New Coke, how fast would you skate to the concession stand?
Okay, yeah, I think that's a pretty good. I would fly there, unless Princess Leia was there in her gold bikini. Then she might get in line first for me. But yeah, I mean, I'd be a little turned off by the New Coke thing. That'd be but yeah, everything else would be okay. So
I'd valid
be
answers.
There. Yes, yep. So that's it for our question and answer section. I kind of had a little rant section. We could do a little rant here.
You want to rant first?
Well, my question was this. I guess it's another question. I was just going to say, which one do you think was more? No, what's the word I'm looking for? Which one was more egregious to the world? Crystal Pepsi or New Coke?
In doing a little bit of research to write these questions, neither. New Coke, like I said, in blind taste tests, especially with the younger demographic, which is what they're going after, usually barely beat Pepsi and really beat original Coke as far as a blind preferred taste test. Coke had like 60 to 70% of the soda market share right after World War II, but by 1980, Coke had slipped to only like 23%, and Pepsi was winning in the younger demographics. And so they thought they'd get this new Coke. And in the blind taste test, New Coke did taste better.
Who are these blind taste? They must be blind and tasteless. Who are these people?
Well, as you were referring to, so then we go to Crystal Pepsi. Crystal Pepsi, when that whole clear things that came out, like with Zima, and there were some other things, and the purity, people are like how Dove soap or whatever is 99 and 44, 100% pure. So that was a big push into the 90s. So Pepsi taking some risks, they eliminated the caramel coloring. They used like a food starch or something for whatever to help get it light. And so it did taste a little less, like you said, a little less bitter or a little less acidic, and it had less calories. But then Coke jumped out with clear Tab, with Tab being sugar-free and everything, trying to think that, all clear beverages are going to have no sugar, no taste, and stuff like that. And basically, that's what ruined Crystal Pepsi. So it was a little bit fighting between the two titans of the cola industry.
Yeah, they released it knowing it would fail just to try to make Pepsi fail, which is just
And it worked.
it sounds diabolical about Coke. So which one? So which one do you think was more egregious? Which one was worse?
I think Coke, because they had been harping on how it's the real thing, and it had been almost the same recipe for nearly 100 years, except for getting rid of a little bit of the cocaine out of it. And then they made an about face. They had a new CEO take over, I think, in '80, and I think it was a reaction to, we're losing market share, we got to do something different. So it's like, we advertise tradition, we're never going to change, and then they lose a little bit of market share, and now they're going to change their vaunted Coke recipe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel a little stronger about it because I think New Coke was, I mean, okay, when you buy Crystal Pepsi, you know what you're in for. You're going there, you buy it, it looks like a bottle of antiseptic, it looks like a bottle of hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
You get it home, you're like, this tastes different. Well, what do you think? I mean, you saw the
surprised.
bottle when you bought it, but New Coke was confusing. You buy it, and like, first of all, Coca-Cola, I mean, they have the best logo, the best script writing and maybe of all products. And then they just go and put we're going to change the name to Coke instead of Coca-Cola. So we just put a C-O-K-E, typewritten C-O-K-E. I mean, they have the nicest looking bottle, it's supposed to look like the woman's figure or whatever. They might as well have gotten rid of that while they're at it. And so they changed the name to Coke, and then they later introduced Coca-Cola Classic. And then it was more confusing because somebody would bring one at a party and you're like, is this New Coke? Is this old Coke? And then they introduce us with the advertising kicks off with Bill Cosby, a guy you can always trust. I mean,
Right.
What did Bill Cosby ever do to not
a drink?
Not earn America's trust? Yeah, you don't want to take a drink from him without checking its contents first. There might be something. You might get a little sleepy afterwards, but
Yeah, 100%.
And then Crystal Pepsi. I mean, the worst part, they came out with that Super Bowl commercial where they have Sammy Hagar. So you get the new Van Halen with the new Pepsi, and he's singing right here, right now. And they played that song 5 million times after it was in the Super Bowl commercial, and I always thought of it as a commercial after that.
Well, and it led to a great Saturday Night Live spoof of at Thanksgiving time of Crystal Gravy.
Crystal Gravy was one of their best ever, yeah.
Yes. The late great Phil Hartman.
So I guess that's my little rant. Did you have any?
Well, someone accused Coke, going into conspiracy theories, and we don't ever back away from the controversy here at the 70s versus the 80s podcast, that Coke did it on purpose to drum up all this attention, get people to hate it so they'd like the old Coke, the original Coke, better. And when they asked the CEO, we're neither dumb enough or smart enough to have done that, figured that out to do that.
And that's kind of actually what happened, I think. It was
100%. It caused people to go back to the, hearken for the old Coke, and it helped their market share. I think they gained 8% back in the year or two following reintroducing Coke as, Coke Classic or whatever they did. McDonald's in their restaurant, which is kind of where Coca-Cola, even when Pepsi was winning the market share in grocery stores, McDonald's or Coca-Cola had the lion's share of restaurants, including McDonald's, which we had talked about McDonald's on a previous episode. And they, as soon as Coca-Cola announced that they were going back or going to go back to the original recipe or have both of them available, McDonald's switched all their restaurants from the new Coke back to the original Coke.
Yeah, and I think that was the death nail, if I remember it right. That's what sent everything back. And, it's just the spokesman didn't help. We had America's dad, Bill Cosby for New Coke. And then Pepsi, we had the, Sammy Hagar, the kind of the fake wrestling rocker.
Yes, the non-David Lee Roth version of Van Halen.
And the clear beer, I mean, that caused all the clear beer, which just was pretty awful.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we had clear deodorant, clear toothpaste. It was just getting out of control back then. And
it's everything. It seems that, everything's cyclical where someone gets something and everybody rushes behind it. And I guess that continues to this day.
It was clearly a bad fad.
Yes. That's perfect way to end it.
And that has been another episode of the 70s versus the 80s. If you want to leave us a message, tell us where we made a mistake, you want to tell us funny song lyrics you got wrong, or you want to stump us with a trivia question, There is a link to leave a voicemail in the show notes. And of course, rest in peace, Gordon Lightfoot.